In this recording, we're going to be talking about neoliberal theory. So, neoliberal theory believes that there's a straightforward path to modernity, but that it's cultural values that prevent development. They criticize aid-based approaches such as modernization theory, and they support the trade not aid quote. So, neoliberals like Moyo and Fasterly believe that a lot of foreign aid is misused, and the net effect of international aid to poorer countries is often very harmful because it undermines things like good governance and free markets. Also, Bauer believes that aid has exacerbated some of the problems that led to underdevelopment in poorer countries. Aid makes things like corruption and economic mismanagement at worse rather than better, because international aid is often used to prop up the corrupt governments or inefficient business. If developing countries increase their share of international trade, this would be far more effective than international aid, as it would generate a lot more income for the developing country. For example, Asian countries have seen rapid economic growth due to increasing the amount of international trade. Neoliberals argue that the best possible way for poorer countries to increase their share of international trade is to end economic protectionism and to adopt free trade approach. A free trade approach means that local and foreign countries are treated the same, and this involves a process of trade liberalisation where governments are encouraged to remove trade barriers that inhibit trade across borders. Trade liberalisation means that governments treat local and foreign products the same, which involves the reduction or elimination of trade barriers. The best possible way to manage the economy is for the state to do as little as possible and to reduce things like red tape, rules, regulations and taxes that might inhibit entrepreneurs and act as barriers to trade. Neoliberalism is an important perspective, as it has been seen of the dominance of the Bretton Woods institutions, and neoliberal policies have often been prescribed and implemented via Structural Adjustment Plans, SAPs for short. SAPs are sets of conditions attached to the IMF or World Bank loans, which oblige nations to tackle a number of actions that are consistent with the neoliberal perspective. For example, the government has to cut back on subsidies. However, the problem with SAPs is that they can cause horrific consequences to poor people. For example, when water was privatised in Bolivia, it meant that poor people couldn't access water to drink. SAPs have gained such a bad reputation that the World Bank has now replaced them with poverty reduction strategy papers. However, this is simply a rebranding exercise. It's not just developing countries that have seen the effects of SAPs, but SAPs have also had horrific consequences for people in the Eurozone. For example, places like Greece have been effectively bankrupt and now being bailed out by the IMF and are having to undergo their own structural adjustment. There are many examples of when neoliberal policies can be seen. For example, Morrison found in China that gradual privatization of the state-owned enterprises and the development of private enterprise zones with lower taxation led to the highest growth in the world. However, China is heavily controlled by the government, which is not what neoliberals want. Also, another example is in Chile, as from 1973, free market policies were introduced, which led to Chile's industrialization. However, the main success was on their copper, which was never exposed to free markets and still remains part of their national economy. Neoliberal policy can be evaluated for its usefulness because it has contributed to the debate about international aid, which has helped to make aid more transparent. However, Chang has argued that there is a real hypocrisy at the heart of neoliberalism because Western countries did not develop according to neoliberal prescription. For example, it was President Lincoln who raised tariffs to the highest level ever. Also, SAPs haven't been successful because developing countries' income was higher in the period of state-led development and economic protectionism than it has been during the subsequent period of structural adjustment and free market principles. Also, people on the left like Chomsky have argued that the free market doctrine is selectively applied. For example, whilst there is a pressure on poorer countries to remove trade barriers, rich countries, particularly in the field of agriculture, continue to give very generous subsidies to their own producers. So in conclusion, neoliberal theory is widely accepted and countries have adopted to the policies and become industrialized through it.